and it's great to be here. I hope you are all doing very well, and it's nice to say hello to those of you who I have met before, and welcome to all of you, and hope to meet all of you at some point again. I don't know what the weather is like there, but I'm looking out the window and it's snowing pretty heavily here. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland, so I hope you're in a place where you're warm and comfortable, and we'll get started. Again, I'm with the National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity, and my focus over the last 15 years has been on issues of access and equity in education. And we're going to do two tasks today. The first task is just a brief overview of some of the elements that we covered in the training, just the key points. Mostly because some folks who are participating may not have been at the training, but also because it's been a little while. There was a whole lot of information in that day-long program, and so just pulling out those key points that we want to pay attention to might be helpful. The second piece we're going to be doing is looking at what micromessaging and building self-efficacy in students around STEM fields looks like by giving a specific activity that integrates all the elements into it. And we'll be doing that again in February when we host or when we participate and provide training around another topic area, which is fixed versus growth mindset. So we'll look forward to continuing that. So let me wake up my computer. So again, we'll do a brief review and reflection. So let's start there. And if you remember, when we met, we talked about that we're moving into a process model rather than a product. It is very comfortable and it is very traditional for people to show up, presenters to show up with the answer, the solution, the 10 steps, the silver bullet, if you will. When in fact the reality is there is no single 10 steps because everybody looks, when we look at these issues in our schools, there are a complexity of challenges that are all combined to identify the challenges we face. Our students are different. Our goals are different in terms of recruitment, retention, participation, and performance. We got changing demographics. Some schools have very different populations from others, economic issues, rural versus urban, and suggesting that there is a one standard product or even process for doing this is very difficult. And so it requires that each community, each school, each campus have its own team, and that they look at their classrooms, they look at their student populations, they look at their own issues and craft the solutions that's going to get them to their goal. And what that means is that you're going to spend some time collecting data, which is really in the exploration phase, and really ask yourselves and getting agreement around what it is you want to tackle first, because this is, you know, never ending, right? So what are you going to tackle? What's your goal? What's the population you're looking at? What's your what does success look like when you achieve it? And you know, looking at the data and then making a plan on how you're going to get there. But the strategy only comes really in the select stage. So we're talking about explore, and we're talking about discover. And in these two phases, you spend a fair amount of time preparing before you implement the strategy, because if the strategy doesn't reach the root cause of the problem, then you won't get the outcome you're hoping for. To that end, you may recall that we gave you a number of tools. One of them was discover your biases, the implicit association test. And you may want to go to the website, but there's a piece of paper that we handed out at the presentation. It's also available to you now through a website that is provided to you by Patty and her team. All of the materials from our first webinar are there, as well as the materials that we're going to be talking about today will be provided to you. But the first place to start then is just to find out how culture has affected your biases, and there's a number of assessments there, and they're kind of fun, just to get a sense of, you know, what may be some of our own implicit biases, and some of those are negative and some of them are positive. People always think implicit bias may be a negative or micromessages are negative, but they can be very affirming and very positive, and that's also good to know. So a second document I just want to remind you that you should have is a micromessaging implementation plan and capstone project development. It's a large name for a very short piece of paper, a couple pages. But it's a simple table that allows you to focus on a particular program, identify a underrepresented group, perhaps non-traditional group for your targeted program, look at the baseline data, and set a very specific goal. Increase student performance, participation, persistence. What is it you want to see happen or change? And then the second stage is discovering the results, and that's where you enter in information about your implicit association test, perhaps a second implicit association test because there's many of them, peer observation results from the charts and information we provided to you, and perhaps a climate survey which we also provided to you, or a student survey. So really exploring what's happening in your school is going to be important before we get to strategies. And so that's why sometimes people say, well, what is the strategy? The answer is, well, there are lots of strategies, and in fact we gave you pages of strategies. But they're not the very simple, start a mentoring program that while great, the changes that are required are actually smaller and more subtle. It's about creating a climate in your classroom, your programs, your campuses that are inviting, welcoming, and supportive, positive environments for learning. I reiterate all of these things because one of the efforts we want you to begin with your school and with your communities, your team within your school, is to think about what is the action research that you're going to take on to see if this new model will create the change you'd like to see, or at least move you in the right direction. And what we found from our data is about 80 to 85% of teachers, individual teachers, found a small but significant impact, and I mean statistically significant impact on their students. So what we're seeing is a very strong outcome. Change a very small thing and you get very good outcomes for your students. Just a reminder, when we talk about STEM, most of our work has been funded by the National Science Foundation, and so as an organization that has grown out of current technical education and is predominantly focused on secondary education and community colleges, our work and our research is focused on these areas. So when we talk about STEM, this is what we are talking about. However, just so you know, if these programs are not where you work, the work that we're talking about today can apply really to any field. So I want you to not feel discouraged if you don't see your program listed here. The last piece I just sort of let you know at this moment is that, as I mentioned, we have a number of documents that we've given you before and some new ones. But pay also attention to research nuggets. There's one that we're providing you today called Countering STEM Bias in the Workplace. It talks a little bit about what happens in STEM fields and some of the challenges that still remain there. Gives some illustrations and examples of what that looks like, and then some successful research-based strategies. There are actually 4 listed there, as well as some references and bibliography if you'd like more information. So remembering, again, the key point from our previous work, the difference between equality and equity. We're moving from an equality model, meaning that everybody in the classroom sort of gets the same treatment, the same content, the same whatever, teacher. We're looking instead about meeting students where they are and creating an equal playing field for where learning can take place. And that will achieve equal outcomes. Everybody will be successful. That's what our goal is. The model that we're using to achieve that outcome is the NAEP model. It's called the culture wheel, and it begins with cultural stereotypes that we all experience. And we're always, I shouldn't say we, I am always surprised when I hear coming out of the mouth of a 3 or 4-year-old, I want to be a princess when I grow up, or I'm going to be a firefighter when I grow up. That those are informed by external stereotypes that are just present in our culture, whether you have any part of that conversation or not. You live in the world, and there are just certain attitudes, beliefs, conversations, and elements that just filter into our lives. Now, that's not all bad, and I'm not suggesting it's all good. It is just simply that's something we need to be aware of, and that it influences who we are. When we talk about American culture being different from, say, European culture, that's really what we're talking about. We get shaped, our attitudes, beliefs, and our intentions and the way we behave are often shaped by those external factors and experiences, and they're shared. They form our biases, implicit and explicit, both good and bad. It's often the case, though, that we may not be aware of those biases, and that's where those micro messages come in, reminding us that the way we communicate, often in very small, subtle, unintended ways, send messages, positive and negative, and that over time those messages accumulate to create either advantage or disadvantage. And that's what happens in the classroom, such that students develop their self-efficacy about their ability to be successful. If they believe that math isn't for girls and their identity is really important at a young age, that intersection or interaction between what it means to be female and what it means to be good at math can create some conflict and keep students out of areas where they actually could be really successful, and it's very valuable. So self-efficacy, the belief you can be successful at something once you start down the path. It may be they're very good at it, but if they don't believe they can be successful or that they should be successful, they will opt out, often without awareness. They don't even understand the impact of culture and those messages on their self-efficacy. But it does shape behavior, and as we see certain behaviors, it shapes our cultural stereotypes. The idea basically then is the point of interruption is micro-messaging. So I said there was no silver bullet, no 10 steps, but the reality is the research says there is a silver bullet. One caring, educated adult can change the life of a child. And the research says to us, if we create a place where students can feel safe and secure, where messages can be communicated affirmatively, you can change, you can transform the life of a child. And that's what we're seeing. In fact, in Maryland, I wanted to show you this data that we've just completed 3 years. We're now in our 4th year, and looked at secondary education, career technical education, and community college faculty in both urban, excuse me, a drink of water here. Excuse me, in both urban and rural areas. And what we found was that from the beginning of training, which is pre-academy, to the end of the program, which was in June, the pre-academy started in August, we had significant impact on all of our indicators of teacher awareness, micro-inequities, advising students to take STEM courses, and you can look at those changes down the list. But the part I really want you to notice here, and the overall p-value for remembering back to your statistics courses, to be statistically significant only requires a p of less than 0.05. And these are way below 0.05. So we're very confident that the cause, or if you will, the reason, and for statistician folks in there, I shouldn't use the word cause, the correlation is very strong that it was in fact our training that created the change in these attitudes, intentions, and beliefs. Pre-academy then was at the beginning of a 5-day academy, post-academy is after the 5 days, and post-capstone is after a series of 8 monthly professional learning community meetings, an hour and a half long, where the faculty would all come together and sit and talk about what was really happening in their classes and how this really applied, this concept of micro-messaging and self-efficacy and bias really affected a change and how important it was in the classroom. So what I wanted to show you is what happens is on the post hoc comparisons. When pre equals post, what that means is that there really isn't any change. There wasn't a statistical significant change. The real change then between the pre and the capstone happened in the professional learning communities. So they got the information, but it wasn't the actual change in thinking or believing or understanding didn't actually happen until they spent some time talking with their colleagues. Now, that's not always the case. If you'll notice down below, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 or 6, and below that, I'm knowledgeable about methods to decrease micro-inequities in the classroom. I'm knowledgeable about strategies. I feel confident in my ability to identify and address micro-inequities. Those all changed during the academy, which means there was some transformation, there was some change in understanding and beliefs after the academy. But those month-to-month meetings were very powerful in understanding ways that faculty contribute to their environments. And I just can't emphasize enough how important it is for these teams to meet and work together, because the impact from education, sitting and listening to me versus, participating and dialoguing with your colleagues, that's an important element to keep in place. Okay. Hold on. Let's see if I'm okay. Sometimes it doesn't want to let me move it. So the other piece that I wanted to pay attention to, wait a minute, is this one. This is Dallas data. This is independent school district, secondary education, and we specifically looked at some courses: chemistry, pre-AP chemistry, and physics. Chemistry is required of all students. What we found was we had an external evaluator, independent evaluator, who looked at students of control and treatment, faculty who'd gone through our program, and looked at the impact on student performance. We particularly looked at a standardized test, which is the ACP in Dallas, and what we found was a significant change between the control and the treatment. And we controlled for everything. In fact, the independent evaluator said he controlled for everything he could think of, and he could only explain the difference in student outcomes based on the professional development. He had controlled for the teachers' quality teacher index they have in Dallas, the level of courses or number of courses in math, etc., that students had taken, so there were the student equivalencies. School equivalencies were also taken into account. There were two other measures. He said it was the third time in 30 years that he had seen direct impact from professional development to student outcomes. So we're very pleased with that, and we expect we'll see something very similar in Maryland. We're continuing to do the research, though. I just wanted to let you know that you're not wasting your time when you're doing this work. It's a struggle, but it has yielded some very powerful outcomes, because what we want to see at the end of the day is student outcomes improving. Now, building student self-efficacy and promoting STEM careers is what we're going to be talking about now as we apply this whole concept, the whole thinking that we just talked about in a particular area. So perhaps one of your goals is to get more of your students to consider taking a STEM career. And I want you to think, place in this discussion in your mind what area you want to focus in. So let's change the language here and say instead, agricultural careers are in demand and opportunities are available for every student, or IT careers are in demand and opportunities, or engineering or auto mechanics, or whatever it is that whatever field you work in. Think about how this would apply to encouraging students to enter into your programs. And some of the pieces that we want you to think about, right, and we're talking here about creating access for every student. What you're not going to see in here is a lot of reference to race or gender. But what we do know, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later, is that particularly when we talk about work values, that people do group into different work values, often based on race or gender. But if you capture all the different work values, you will in fact capture the broad range of students, and not pigeonhole people, but instead allow individuals who perhaps fall outside of the traditional expectations. Social programs or something might be really interesting to a minority male, or more rigorous physics program might be a great opportunity for a young lady. And sometimes when we aren't thinking in that direction, we might accidentally exclude somebody unintentionally. I'm just trying to give an example of how bias plays into it. So as we think on how we include everybody, you're much more likely to raise the opportunities for everybody. So STEM, what we have to do is put together a STEM career toolkit, remembering that counselors and educators make a difference. Yes, you are the silver bullet. You are. STEM professionals are in demand. Women, blacks, Hispanics, and people with disabilities are underrepresented in significant ways in most STEM disciplines. STEM professionals make a world of difference and help shape our future. And focused intervention efforts targeting the underrepresented make a difference. It works. Now, some of you have gotten a toolkit from us in the past, and if you haven't had a chance to pull it out, I would encourage you to do it. There is a career booklet that really walks through all of this material very carefully and clearly. There are lesson plans and activities and some special tools, and there's a number of different activities. Some of those you'll see today. All of them are available, all the activities, by the way, are available on napequity.org/counselors. So some of the materials I'm going to be talking about today will be available to you through our website, and they will also be available through Pennsylvania's website. What I'd like you to do now is create a list of all the items. Just take a minute to think about a list of the items you've used today that have been engineered. Just think about it for a second. And then what I'd like you to do, writing in the question box, and those answers come to me, they don't go to the group, so you can feel comfortable plopping in there whatever you want, to create a list of all the items you've used today that have been engineered. We want you to identify one thing you've used today that has not been engineered. So let me correct that. So in the question box, can you please identify one thing you've used today that has not been engineered? So I'm seeing some great answers here. The air we breathe, my brain, air, sunlight, the snow outside to make snow angels. I like the way you think. Water. Great. Great answers. And, you know, in fairness, this is kind of a, oh, tea bag. That's interesting. I think it's kind of a trick question. So I have to apologize. So for instance, one of the things we want to think about, and the goal of this is to really ask your students, you know, these materials can be used directly in the classroom. Ask the students, what is one thing that you can think of today that's not been engineered? And they'll come up with similar kinds of answers. But let's think about this for a second. The air we breathe, to a large extent, is processed through all kinds of processes that, in the air today, we have so much that, you know, comes from our atmosphere, pollution, and then there's efforts to use engineering to clean the air that's released from factories and from all the different products that use air, and so we actually do. The quality of the air we breathe today is very different from the quality of air we breathed 100 years ago and 200 years ago, getting cleaner and less clean at different times depending on industrial development. And so that has a lot to do with what's been engineered, both to create the pollution we've experienced, but also to clean up that pollution. Then, you know, thinking about my brain, well, you know, you wonder, your brain, have you taken any vitamins? Do you ever take medication? If you've ever been depressed, or, you know, people use anti-depression or medical treatments, whatever, that can affect hormone levels or, you know, happiness or just health. And so even your brain can often have the benefit of engineering. Yeah, water, okay, water and snow, I suppose. But you know, we filter so much of our water now. The question is how many times has the water we're drinking today actually been used? Because you know, it keeps cycling through all kinds of engineering-based systems, and to keep it clean and able to drink. And in fact, you know, the cleanliness of our water is attributed to a lot of the increase in health and longevity, thanks to brilliance around engineering. So I'm just giving you examples of, you know, responses as students might answer these similarly. And the reason is because sometimes our students think about areas of STEM very narrowly. And one of the things we want to do in creating both self-efficacy, you can do this, but we want to create messages about, you know, who you are is important. What is important to you is valuable to me as an instructor. And we want you to understand that when we talk about these fields, you are included in it because what you care about, this field really touches on. But that also requires for us to think about these things a little bit differently. All right. Oh. One of the trends in this country that I think is quite exciting is to introduce different topics in science technology through grand challenges. Now, these are some of the grand challenges, or these are the grand challenges for the National Academy of Engineering, but a number of fields now offer grand challenges. You might want to check and see if your association, etc., has a list of grand challenges. The idea being that students need to think about science, technology, engineering, math much more broadly than they currently do and see how it connects to their world. Workforce growth, for instance, to help students understand how powerful and important STEM is. The science and engineering workforce has grown by 5 times, 5.9%, the rate of the general workforce since 1950. Many science and engineering workers are reaching traditional retirement age, 26% older than age 50 in 2006, and today, you know, we're probably in the next decade going to see a continuation of that growth in retirements, just because of the baby boom. 7 out of the 10 fastest growing occupations requiring at least an associate's degree are in STEM fields. Half of all STEM jobs are available to workers without a 4-year college degree. That's going to be something we'll talk about again a bit more in a minute. And as of 2011, 26 million U.S. jobs, 20% of all jobs require a high level of knowledge in any one STEM field. And so we want to talk to students not just about STEM careers, because they'll often say, well, what am I going to use this for, but also STEM knowledge, because we always have to remind students that we're not just preparing for the jobs that exist today, we're preparing for the jobs that exist tomorrow. I once had a young woman say to me, I asked her, I said, well, what are you hoping to be when you finish school? And she said, I don't know, that job hasn't been created yet. I thought that was a great answer. So, you know, but having STEM knowledge will prepare you for whatever that job is. Another thing that students often have trouble with, and one of the reasons they veer out of STEM areas, is because they're concerned about how much education they're going to need. Either they don't want to continue in education, they're kind of feeling exhausted at the moment. They are concerned about the cost of education. They've heard a lot of negative information about the payment, what it requires to get a college education, and then there's no return on investment. And so I think it's important for us to begin to explain to students that, you know, the value of STEM, and particularly around technician education and career and technical education, is that you can begin really at any level and it builds. And in fact, a really good way to gain education is really to start with an apprenticeship or some sort of certification program, working towards an associate's degree, which is less expensive and can often yield jobs that pay better than jobs with bachelor's degrees. But that associate's degree is not wasted because it can build towards a bachelor's degree, and so forth and so on. So when we talk to students and their parents, it's often about explaining to them that, of course, you know, many of them really want their children to have a bachelor's degree, and think that, you know, they've heard all the hype about how important it is, but that's, you know, we're not taking anybody off the path simply by going into current technical education. In fact, many CTE students often end up with a bachelor's degree, I think at an even higher rate than those students who don't go through CTE. And so, and I say that because I was reading that recently, so I'm happy to pull that data. We talk about STEM degrees. It's also important to connect it back to lots of other kinds of jobs to help them understand that, that being a person with a STEM degree simply unlocks lots of other jobs, as well as the specific career area they're looking at. So what we're talking about here is really changing the conversation. Creating access for all students in STEM, both in terms of career areas and in terms of work values, what's important to them. We're going to start here by simply talking about STEM professionals and how they make a world of difference and help shape the future. It's important and powerful areas. STEM careers are essential to our health, happiness, and safety. I threw out some ideas for water and air, but it's all connected to keeping things clean and healthy is certainly part of the STEM profession. And then STEM professionals are creative, collaborative problem solvers. One of the challenges we often hear from students is that STEM, they want to be creative. So their natural stereotypes are that the only places where you can be creative are in perhaps the arts or humanities, when in fact STEM has lots of room for creative people and collaborative problem solvers. So they need to take another look. One of the activities that you can use with your students that will be provided to you today is this little chart. It's called Health, Happiness, and Safety. This can be used with any students, and there are also similar activities if you're at a community college. There are similar activities that are often housed in the technology in the careers offices to be used. But what we try to do with this activity is simply to look at different careers, such as an audiologist or wind energy engineer or actuary, multimedia artist, animator, and help them think about how those careers lead to health, happiness, or safety. So for instance, a nanosystems engineer could create tiny particles that can move around a patient's body, finding and killing cancer cells. So a nanosystems engineer would work in health, right? A computer programmer could help studios create cutting-edge and cool video games that are fun and help students learn. And so that could be happiness. And for safety, a photonics technician could work on manufacturing and maintenance of optical fingerprint scanners for a security company. So you take the careers on the left and you move them into the pockets on the right to help students understand that, STEM has many opportunities to support health, happiness, and safety. All right, your turn again. I would like you to list all of the reasons why people may choose a career path. And again, just type in your answers in the question box. So I'm seeing a lot of parental influence, money, reproductive counseling, family history, money, high school counselor, media, just an opportunity because the job was open, geographical or opportunity. They don't know other careers, so they just enter it because it's what they know. That's right. Could be something they like doing. Could be location. Interesting. Lots of great input. Thank you. Okay. Environmental factors, challenging, could be interesting because it's challenging. I like that. Just appearance, so it could be the job is just attractive. So you get lots of different reasons why people choose careers. One of the, I think probably the predominant answer was parent influence, and I think that's very true. People do tend to fall into certain careers. One of the things that we found is parents have the ability to create self-efficacy in students. They give them lots of advice and lots of affirmations and lots of guidance. And it could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Because sometimes it can be you're not good enough or don't go for that because you'll fail. Depending upon the parent's guidance, students will sometimes make career decisions, and so that's why you end up seeing families of all police officers or all engineers or people, you know, healthcare workers, because they know how to navigate those systems. They know who to network with to help you get a job. So there's a lot involved in the power of parents. But we also saw there, maybe one or a few people noted, that it's also just what they know. And so the opportunity here is to create an appreciation. We've already sort of talked a little bit about what it is people do. But for our educators, it's important to understand work values. There are really 4 reasons why people go into careers. The first one is intrinsic values, autonomy and interest. People will select a job because they can work independently, because the work is interesting, and so it is often true that when you host events where students can try out something different and it piques their interest or they have immediate success, they'll tend to continue to look into it as potentially as one option. Another reason that students enter fields, and let me just say that people on average change careers 5 times in their lifetime. So none of these are fixed. What you value now may not be the same thing you valued 10 years ago or that you will value 10 years from now. But extrinsic values specifically are related to making money and job security. For some students, prestige is very important. My daughter, who is 26 years old, decided she was going to go into media, and she got a job at a TV station when she was in graduate school, and then transferred to Baltimore and worked in a TV station here, which is I don't know what they call mid-level market, and it's quite prestigious to tell people you are a producer at a TV station. When she went to her high school, she sat at a table and at a career fair and had the longest line of any other career area there. Students love the idea of working at a TV station. What she had to tell them, though, was the salary was very poor. She didn't get benefits. The hours were horrible. She had to work all night long so people could get their news in the morning. And that the career itself was very challenging, very competitive, and didn't have a lot of opportunities for growth. It was all the things that didn't go along with extrinsic values. And while there was certainly some issues around social values, her interest in being in a prestigious position or something that seemed to be prestigious shifted over the next couple of years as she realized that what she really needed to do was make a little bit more money and get some health care benefits. So sometimes, you know, where you are at the moment is important, but there are other considerations as well. We have to keep letting students know you can have prestige in a number of different occupations. And certainly working with people and contributing to society is very important, particularly for this generation. So if these are the 4 work values, and the diversity of students may group into different sections, what's really important is by including all the sections, you include all the students. You lose no one. So as you talk to students about your different career areas, one of the things you're going to want to do is make sure that you highlight each of these 4 areas so that you can touch on an area that the student feels is important and what they value, and acknowledges that you respect their values and that they can find that in that job. You might want to consider yourself just what you value about your career. Think for a moment about how it's changed over time and how do your values compare to your colleagues. So the opportunity when you get into your groups is to spend a little time asking, well, how did you get into your profession? Has it changed? Have you changed professions? Why? What became important that had you changed your profession? And then you begin to understand how important it was to attract people to their career from different avenues. And we're going to try this out a little bit. We're going to identify the work values and the phrases from these students, and we're going to practice relating STEM careers to those work values. And you see at the top, intrinsic, extrinsic, social, and prestige. So we'll try these. So one of our students wants to earn lots of money and drive a fancy sports car. I'd like to be my own boss too. So just think for a moment. We'll just sort of try this out. What two work values can be expressed in earning lots of money, driving a fancy sports car, and being their own boss? Intrinsic is being your own boss, and of course extrinsic is about the money. Let's try it again. It is important that I love my work and that the work I do will make a difference in the world. If you could write into the box what you think the answer is, and we'll see if you get it right. Okay. Okay. Just a reminder, intrinsic, extrinsic, social, and prestige. And the answer, so make sure I stay with the PowerPoint, is intrinsic and social. Intrinsic is, it is important that I love my work, and again, combination of interest and autonomy, and that that it will make a world of difference is social. I want a job that allows me to have better social status, and I want a good paying job so I can buy the things I want. Okay. This is extrinsic and prestige. Extrinsic is I want a good paying job so I can buy the things I want. Prestige is about having a better social status. Okay. I'd like to work independently at times to solve a piece of a bigger puzzle. So working independently, that would be one work value, and that way people will be able to recognize and value my hard work. Being recognized is another work value. So what do you think? Okay. Oh, went back too fast. Okay. And so this one is social and prestige. It is important that I have a career where I'm always able to find employment. I want that security so I can support a family someday. But also, I want to do work that really changes the world. You got it now. Extrinsic and social. Well done. So now we have an understanding of work values. Let's just take a moment to talk about a couple of additional things. One is that we want to make sure that students understand what is important to them. Spending a little time, we have this worksheet and a lesson plan that lets you work with your students so that they can identify what's important in terms of their work values, and as they begin to think about different careers, they can ask themselves, how will this career help me achieve these work values in my life? What's important to me? And perhaps helps them also have a conversation with counselors and others, their parents, about what's important to them and how that career can either fill those needs or not. It really opens up the ability to have a conversation. I would also encourage you to take a look and have your students take a look at one of two sites. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a number of STEM careers, if you link to this site, that you can use for a lot of self-exploration. Science Buddies is really for younger students, either middle school or high school, probably early high school. Again, it has a lot of really fun and interesting career information, and specifically focusing on science and technology sort of areas. So spend a little time looking at that. There's lots of things you can do with it. One of the pieces that I want to highlight to you today is this connection then between work values and STEM careers and degree. So we're putting all that together in this STEM career search matrix. So they would look at a specific career, in this case environmental engineer. They would look at how much money you could make, summarize the job and what they might do in that job, and what do we need to do to pursue the occupation or career? What would I study in college, and how could I prepare now? So it gives them an example of what is needed, but then it also allows them to put careers under trade or certificate, associate's degrees, and help them to pull apart what is going to be required of them in order to be successful in that career. The next page allows you then to have them identify 3 STEM careers that are in demand, look for faster than average projected growth or outlook, connect it to health, happiness, and safety, and then, some opportunities, in this particular case, about collaboration. Now, how does this connect back to the whole work around, access, equity, and diversity, micromessaging, and, using micromessaging to build access, equity, and diversity? Again, what we're talking about here is helping students explore their own values from lots of different perspectives so that every student is engaged. It's not about gender or race. It's about ensuring that everybody, even those who may have different and diverse perspectives and values, are included in the room. And to that extent, we have these kudos cards. And the one I want to highlight, remember, these are cards that you would give to students to really pull out important elements or qualities that those students have in positive ways. And this is probably my favorite kudos card, because when we talk about non-traditional students, what you're talking about is oftentimes students who come in with less experience perhaps in an area. For instance, a young woman, a young female may come into your classroom, and maybe your classroom is automotive technology, and she's never worked with automobiles really, but she's really curious, and she always felt like it would be something interesting to explore. But when she gets in there, maybe the guys know it really well, and they're kind of showing off a little bit, and it's intimidating her a little bit. Maybe she makes some mistakes, and things happen. She's not feeling included, welcome, valued, and it's not your fault, because you're trying to help her be that way, but it is just the dynamic. The opportunity in those moments where she may be getting some micro inequities is to provide a micro affirmation. You learn from your mistakes. Let's not pretend she doesn't make mistakes. Let's instead say, every student makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. But in fact, you made a mistake, but you know what? You learn from your mistakes, and that's really what's important. So you can say that in a classroom, or you can pull out one of these cards and give it to that student. That one comment may be the comment that gets that non-traditional student to hang in there another day. It's okay that I make mistakes. That's what my faculty member just told me. And not only is it okay for me to make mistakes, it's actually a quality of mine, right? So helping people to connect, particularly non-traditional students, by giving them powerful messages. And kudos cards are just one way of doing this. There's lots of other ways to think about, okay, this non-traditional student's in my classroom, let's make sure that everything of value, so whatever it is, it can be, you know, issues of color or I don't know, cleanliness or, you know, people, diverse images, or whatever it is. Creating an environment where people feel included, but then making the message clear, you belong here. And how do we do that? And, you know, we do that, again, in multiple ways, by demonstrating how important it is that everybody's values, everybody's interests count. Okay, so just trying to connect it all together, small but powerful ways. So what I would like you to take away today is that positive messaging, explaining the value of STEM careers using positive messaging that is attractive to and equitable for a diverse group of students will ensure that every student is valued, is included, is welcomed, is supported, and is more likely to be successful. You get the student outcomes you want. Work values. Incorporate the benefits of STEM careers into discussions that will appeal to the work values of students of different class, race, and gender. Assume nothing about what students' values are. Instead, ensure everybody's values are included and advise a diverse group of students into a variety of pathways of opportunities in STEM. Now, I think I mentioned earlier, but let me mention again because it's important for you to remember. We have some research nuggets that we want you to look at, and they have specific strategies in there. All of these documents have super strategies, and we have a page with just actually 7 pages of very specific strategies. But your first responsibility is to identify what is the goal you want to achieve and what's the data you have to support that goal. What do you want the world to look like once you're successful? What does success look like? Once you have that, then you select your strategies. For this case, you might want to conduct some STEM career activities. If you feel like the challenge for you is not enough students are taking or considering your programs, do not underestimate the power of peer influence in dragging students into different courses. Counselors play an important part, parents and teachers do, but peers are also very important. The more you can create an environment where students want to show up and be engaged and have friends and feel welcomed, the more likely they are to let their friends, their siblings, and others know about it. So create an environment, in this case, where students understand what are the opportunities in the career area you're talking to them about. Use those kudo cards to write personal notes to students, help them connect to not just the career, but also to the individual who works in that career and who supports that career. And then role models. I do want to say something about role models. We know from the research that role models are very important, but there's some conditions. The conditions are it is best to find somebody as close to their age, sort of at the next step along the career pathway as possible. So high school students talking to middle school students, college students or people in the workforce or in apprenticeships or internships or whatever talking to high school students and then etc. So having somebody come in who's 30 or 40 years older, sometimes what the students will walk away with is a belief that, yes, women can be successful in this field, but not me. They won't make the direct connection to their own lives. And it is often true that it is best to have somebody sort of looks like the student by race, gender, ethnicity, etc. However, it is not essential. Certainly there are young people, if you remember back to who influenced you, there are a number of factors. So if you are not successful in finding a woman, for instance, for a non-traditional role model, you can still make sure that the role model you do have really talks inclusively, uses both male and female pronouns, references in their PowerPoint, the power of that they work with women or they're studying with women who do a great job. And so, as long as you sort of pay attention to those elements, a number of role models would be great. So we talked today about the educators, classroom scientists, and of course it can be campus or program scientists, and using this process. After you leave today, we want you to explore the climate and culture using the tools we gave you and I discussed at the beginning of this webinar in your programs and classrooms. We want you to educate yourself further with research nuggets that you've been provided. We want you to continue to work collaboratively in monthly meetings to create action research. So as you go through this process and you identify specific micromessaging that you want to take on, so specific root causes that you identify, what is the action research? When will you start? How will you measure it? What will the outcomes? How will you measure the outcomes? And that way you continue to learn. So you won't always be successful, but what we are seeing is a lot of success. And even in the, as you talk to your students and we all talk together, we know that it's always about continuous learning. So whatever comes of it. All right, and I am going to wind up here. We've got a couple minutes left to see if there are any questions.
Folks, I'm going to unmute you since we have a, I'm going to unmute you so that if you want to, you can ask your question verbally to Claudia. I hope this doesn't cause problems with feedback. Sometimes that happens when you do this. So if you have a question for Claudia and you'd like to speak over your microphone, I believe everybody can do that now, or phone.
Okay. And I see there are a couple questions. Yes, you will be getting a copy of this PowerPoint. And is there anything we can do to prepare for the next webinar? The answer is, well, if you keep meeting, hopefully the goal will be that by the next webinar you may have some questions specific about an implementation of a strategy that you're conducting. You're welcome to reach out to me at any time anyway, but I think the goal is to really begin on this process of learning so that by April you can actually spend some time. I think you have a whole day planned, and we were hoping there would be a couple of hours where we would just really spend some time asking what happened. Did you apply something? What was the outcome? How did it go? And perhaps even identify a few folks who might like to do some presentations for the groups so you can kind of understand how micromessaging worked or didn't work in your programs.
Tailgate party audition. She has to go and be.
Are there other questions?
Does anyone else have a question for Claudia? No? Okay, well, at this point, we're going to end the webinar, and I thank you all for participating with us. I hope that it was valuable information. I've listened to it 4 times, so I'm almost about an expert too on this subject, but I was really impressed with the part where Claudia specifically talked about the fact that the greatest impact that they found in their research was when people sat and talked about this issue as a group and started to think of what the causes might be, and then change came and there was impact. So as you continue your discussion this year and into the new year, we will be in touch with you, and we look forward to your participation in February. Thanks very much. Have good holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Okay.